You're listening to the Membership Site Success Podcast, where you learn from successful entrepreneurs how to build and run a profitable membership site so that you too can generate recurring revenue for your business month after month. And now, here's your host, membership site expert, Vic Dorfman.
Today's guest on the Membership Site Success Podcast is Russ Perry, owner of DesignPickle.com, which has grown from 0 to 150 subscribers in just 6 months. And Russ is a super smart guy. In fact, we were in a productized services mastermind together, and every time this guy showed up, everybody would perk up their ears and listen because he is just a wealth of business experience. He's been in business for over a decade. Even though Design Pickle is a new venture, he's been in business for over a decade. And every time he opens his mouth to speak, he drops knowledge and teaches something. And in today's episode, he's going to be talking about his journey into Design Pickle and how he very quickly built himself a very profitable and scalable business that he doesn't really need to be a part of on a super intricate level. And he'll tell you all about that himself coming up shortly. So this is one of the best episodes I've ever recorded. This is going to be a lot of fun, very informative and valuable interview. So stay tuned, and I will see you soon. Yeah, Russ, welcome. I guess the very first thing that I wanted to ask you, the first thing I ask everybody really, is how did you get into entrepreneurship? And we'll get into how you got into your current business a little bit later, but specifically, how did you get into starting businesses, working online and working for yourself?
Yeah. Well, depending on how far back you want to go, my first business, I think, was when I was 9, and I wanted to read to people and pay me to read to them, which was not a very successful business model, I learned. Most people with money already knew how to read, so it wasn't a great idea. But past that, I really didn't get into entrepreneurship until after college, or kind of right as I was graduating. I had worked for a couple big companies, and the most notable fun one being Apple, and learned a lot there. But right when I was 22, had some life-changing events happen. Actually had my first daughter around that time, and was really frustrated that I had to file to take time off to go to a doctor's appointment or to do that. And I thought it was the craziest concept. It's here I am having to request permission to spend time with my family. And I thought that was ludicrous. So kind of a fortunate combo of events lined up. I was doing a tiny bit of freelance creative work. I went to school for design, studied a lot, was dangerous in the Adobe apps, and just had one client that was just kind of on that position where I was okay, I could do this. I'll have about a 3-month runway, and either I'll be looking for a job in 3 months if it doesn't work out, or I keep going from there. And thankfully, I was able to keep building things at that point and build a small creative firm.
Okay, and that's the firm that you left to start Design Pickle eventually, right?
Kind of. So in my career, I've actually owned and found 2 firms that were very similar in terms of the business model. It was more of a branding design firm. From 2005 into 2011, it was just me as the only owner, called Keen Creative. And then in 2011, I sort of rolled it up and formed a new business called NSB Keen with a partner in 2 partners. That was 2011 to 2014. And we just did branding, design, some marketing strategy, websites, things like that.
Okay, and so you said what was the business model exactly?
Cut out just quite a bit. What was the question?
So what was the business model for your agency?
I mean, old school, terrible, old fashioned. I mean, it was fee for services. So you would have a problem in this big bucket of needs. I need a website. I need an app. We're going to a trade show. Our brand sucks. we would come to you and say, "Oh yeah, you do have a problem. That sucks. Here, let's help you. And here are all the ways we're going to help you. Here are all the creative things we're going to create. We're going to update your brand. We're going to do a marketing strategy." And we would go and implement that. Some things we would do great at. We were really great at the visual identity design, and we were really great at the marketing strategy and like how to get your name out there and disruptive ideas. Some things we totally sucked at, like managing timelines and budgets and all of that. So it was tough. And the name of that game is bigger, bigger,
Yeah.
bigger.
There's
You're
no
just
recurring component to that business, is there?
hmm,
It's just
no. And you're fighting for every project.
yeah.
A client sneezes weird and you get nervous because they're 35% of your revenue. And it sucked, and it was stressful. There was a lot of volatility in the market in general. People aren't like lining at your door to buy creative ideas. So eventually we got to the point where we were decent, 3 million in revenue, but no profit. And you're kind of like, what's the point of this? All this work, and you're not even, you're barely getting a paycheck.
Yeah. And so how did that sort of transition into what you're doing now, which is Design Pickle? How did you make that leap?
Well, there was no leap to Design Pickle. In fact, I just sort of jumped off a cliff with no net into a black hole for a while. In September, actually, back 1 month in November, I had a really great heart to heart with my former partner over Skype, actually, very similar to this conversation. And just he knew me really well. We still have a great friendship. And he was just like, "What's up? Like, what's going on?" And I
Yeah.
just he had a tough month with sales. I just had been losing steam in terms of passion and interest, and so we had some fundamental disagreements about the business model. Nothing like traumatic, but it was to the point where you realize you're not on the same page and you need to kind of wrap things up. So we closed the business in August. September 1st, I joke I was unemployed, literally unemployed, and just really didn't have a game plan. I mean, my game plan was like, oh crap, I need to make some money. So I kind of figured out a few consulting arrangements to help pay the bills, and just sort of sat on my hands. And the natural entrepreneur in me always wanted to like think of a new idea and execute, but I decided that that wasn't the wisest move because I was in such a weird place. I didn't trust myself to make the right
Mm-hmm.
decisions, and then through a lot of personal development and study and some coaching, I was able to get some space in my life, and then that's when Dizicle quite literally sort of like came together in my
It
mind, and with
fermented,
some,
let's
yeah,
say.
exactly. Yeah, it grew. I mean, but it wasn't until I cleared the field and let there be some, time for that soil to kind of regenerate because it was just so blasted from the last 10 years
Yep.
that that idea came about.
Yeah, that's really interesting that there's a physical process to your ideas and your clarity of mind that just sometimes requires literally disconnecting from anything, going somewhere remote or just being alone and just letting things settle down a bit. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think of like trying to, like if you're doing anything physical or taxing, like you got to recover, man. You can't just go run a marathon and then like the next morning you're fine. And business, I was running a marathon every single day, and to think that okay, now I'm not doing that anymore and I'm going to start something new. I mean, I was wiped. I needed a lot of that recovery time.
right, and that's, there's a really good book about this whole notion of cyclical work and recovery called The Power of Full Engagement, and it's probably one of the best business books I've ever read. I just wanted to
Nice. I'll drop
Yeah, I just wanted to mention it so I could put it in the show notes for everybody. And so okay, so then you started Design Pickle. What sort of inspired that, and how did it go? And
Well,
give us the story here.
yeah. Well, so let me give you context. When I had my agency, I had anywhere from 5 to 15 full-time designers at my disposal. I had account managers. It was pretty easy, like if I needed anything, it was done. So when I was consulting, I literally was like the business card guy. Like, hey, I need, can you get some business cards made? And not to say that I was above it, But it was like, this sucks. Like I'm gonna figure out a way to sort of automate this. I'm gonna outsmart this. So I was doing business cards, don't get me wrong, but I was also doing like brand strategies. So I was this wide gamut. So I figured out that if I kind of hired some contractors and created a little system and process around them, that my clients actually, for all the business card stuff, they could just dial right into them. They can just request right into my system. And I would make sure things were okay, but it was like self-service, like a vending machine of creativity. And so I built that, and it was more just because I don't say I was lazy, but I just didn't want to do that work.
Yeah.
So that started to go, and I had 4 or 5 clients using it. I was like, well, this is nice. And that is when I read, came across, well, I had joined the Dynamite Circle during this phase of transition, just because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It seems cool. And through that found 7 Day Startup by Dan Norris and read that book and was like, blew my mind, because I was like, I have the model basically built that he's using. I mean, I was using half the same tools. I didn't even realize it. Ticketing systems and all this. And so that's when it started. That's when I had enough space to say, you know what? Thinking back to my agency career, doing this production design work is not glamorous. No one likes it. No one likes to pay $75, $150 an hour to do it, like for a client that has an agency. So I was like, I wonder if I could create a model that's really bridging the gap in the marketplace for this high volume demand of content, but doing it with this recurring revenue model. And so put the pieces together, put a silly brand around it, and in January we kind of launched it, and just sort of got it out there as we could to my network, and got some really good early traction, and continued to double down on that every month.
Okay, you explained that in kind of a casual way, but at the same time, you and I talked in the past, and you sent me this list of criteria that you, I mean, it was very intentional, kind of in the back of your mind, let's say, about how you chose this particular service. Can you talk a little bit about those criteria, both the business-specific criteria, but also your personal kind of goals that you needed this business to accomplish to move forward?
So you're right. There wasn't just like this magical moment of clarity. I did actually go through a process to get to that point. So during my Zen stage, as I call it, kind of my stage of clarity, I worked with a business coach, Taylor Pearson, and he and I worked on creating what we call decision-making filter. And what that was it was a filter of things unrelated to any business idea that was sort of like, in the perfect world, what is your life like? Mm-hmm. And for that to be true, so great example is like, in a perfect world, I'm traveling the world. Well, for that to be true, what needs to happen? Like, what does your business need to look like? So if I want to travel the world, I can't have a 9-to-5 job. Yeah. I can't be, in a brick and mortar environment. So if my next thing was a restaurant, then that wouldn't work out, because you got to be there. So we created this list of decision-making filters, is what we called them. And this was months in advance before Design Pickle. And what that served really was as like a bouncer at the door for my brain with these ideas. So as an entrepreneur, you have these ideas like, boom, oh, boom, I'm at the car wash. You know what would be a great idea at the car wash is this and that and this. And, the squeegees are too slow. I'm going to make a new squeegee. And you're like, dude, you don't know anything about manufacturing. Boom, get out of there. Like, that's a terrible idea. One of my decision-making filters was, I don't want to have to learn a new industry, which was a nice one. So that was super helpful. And it almost was like relaxing for me, because here I was not knowing what I'm going to do with my life, like basically 10 years of history closed. And you can get into those self-doubt conversations pretty easily. So rather than like stressing out about trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, I just said, look, here's what I know is going to work for me, and the plan, the decision-making filters, just hang tight until something passes that bouncer. And so then when Design Pickle started to formulate, I was almost nervous to run it through the decision-making process because it was like so many ideas had failed, but one by one we were able to knock it out, and it was like, wow, this idea does work. This idea is a match. And so in that case, then I was like, all right, let's do it. And that's when I started to ramp up and create the brand. And it wasn't until that decision making filter process was clear that I spent even 1 kilojoule of energy more than thinking about it. So like until then, so many entrepreneurs, they'll come up with an idea and they'll buy a domain and they'll make a website and they'll do this, but it's like they don't think through whether or not this business is even going to be right for them, in the long run for what their goals are.
Yeah, and I want to just reiterate that too, that especially after the 7-day startup became popular and the Facebook group now has thousands of people, and a lot of people kind of newbies are appealing to the veteran members saying, hey, I have this idea, et cetera, but what I want to say is that not all businesses are equally productizable. Like you need those filters, because as things grow, as you scale, if your business if it doesn't inherently lend itself to scaling up, like my business does not lend itself to scale at all. Hence, I'm a one-man show for now. But that's okay, because that'll allow me to transition to something else. But your business was set up for success from the start, and successful it has become. Maybe you can share kind of some of your bragging rights type figures.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've sadly, summer has been pretty brutal. We haven't grown as much as we wanted, but yeah, the first month, I mean, we posted, I think, almost $8,000 in revenue and had 30 clients, and I don't think we just picked a thing that everybody needs. Yeah. Like your business, not everyone needs what you do. Like it's a narrow thing.
Yeah, it's a niche. It's not a market.
Exactly. So, but here's the deal. I think what you said is totally right. And a lot of mistakes first-time entrepreneurs make is they overvalue their idea. They think their idea is so great, and they don't test it, which is the number one test is, will people buy it? So, but the other thing, which not a lot of people talk about, is like having actual experience running a business.
Yeah.
Like this is a major thing, and what that means, like you could have the best idea in the world, but if you're not a disciplined business owner, you're not going to grow it no matter how great that idea is. And so you have all these folks with probably actually some great ideas, some scalable ones, but they lack the background to break it beyond what their immediate influence is, whether that's management, financial skills, marketing, sales, you name it. And so that I think I had an unfair advantage when starting Design Pickle, and is I had 10 years of marketing and sales experience, doing that for other people. So taking that and rolling that and just concentrating that into one thing has been really helpful for us to get the momentum. I mean, right now we're at about 155 clients, and we just had our all-day workshop yesterday with like 2 employees here. We're hiring. We have almost 11 employees in the Philippines now. So so we're going, but I couldn't have 11 employees in the Philippines had I not had a rock solid operations manual for them all to work from.
Yeah, and that's the thing that struck me, and I think everybody else in our mastermind, because you were part of our mastermind for a while, our productized services mastermind.
Not the best member, and I apologize for that.
Whatever. You're the whole point of the mastermind is to help you elevate your business. If your business is doing well, that takes priority. But every time that you came on with us for a call, you'd always be dropping a lot of hardcore business knowledge, and we were all kind of wrapped, because it's clear that you're a seasoned business dude, and I have no doubt at all that has had a big part in your success, on top of the fact that you chose your business really well, which probably cycles back to the fact that you have that experience to begin with. So, and I was going to ask this question later, but let me just go ahead and ask it now. What, maybe like 1 or 2 things from your background do you think have really helped you make this project successful? Like attributes or something.
Yeah. Niching down was the hardest thing in the world for us to do as an agency, and I do believe ultimately that was the demise of that business. All the HR problems, all the cash flow problems, really took a second seat to the fact that we were a generalist agency.
Yeah.
You could hire us to do anything. We worked in any industry, and this was a point of contention between my partner and I. I regretfully didn't push the issue as much as I think I should have, and now in retrospect, he wanted to be that way. I in my heart, and I kind of brought it up at times, but then didn't want to rock the boat too much. We could have niched in two ways, like by deliverable. So we are the Facebook ad company or whatever, or by industry. So we are the corn marketing company. We only work with people who grow corn or whatever. And we did neither. So that lack of experience, I guess, or that mistake, I now rolled into Design Pickle. And you'll see that because we only do this narrow subset of graphic design. And we get hammered all the time. So how about illustrations? Well, how about this? Well, how about this? Well, how about web design? Well, how about this? You can make so much money as if you do printing too. And it's like, nope, we just do this one thing. So I think that being one, and if I had to say another, it's building systems and processes to scale. So when I'm doing things, I'm acting as if I am a $10 million company. We have automation and employee manuals and documentation and everything we do, even if I'm only doing it for the first time. Well, I take that back. If it's the second time I'm doing it, then I'll get an Evernote and I'll just screenshot process, and it may not be perfect, but what we've been able to do with that is we've been able to bring on other people, contractor vendors, and it allows me to delegate quicker and easier. And that experience, I learned that kind of the same thing where I didn't do that a lot at the previous business, and then I was the bottleneck at all times. Anyone that needed anything was me. So I had to definitely, I learned from those lessons, and I got better at it towards the end of my agency career. But, now it's here's the process for your email signature, and I don't have a lot of employees that need email signatures, but when I do, boom, it's right there. They know how to do it.
Okay, so your company, I think you wrote that your company grew to 150 subscribers in 6 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've kind of been stuck at 150, unfortunately. We've been oscillating between 160 and 150 for about 45 days and trying to figure that one out.
Okay, well, that's a good problem to have, but to get to that 150, you've done some unusual things that I would be remiss not to mention. The first thing that comes to my mind, and this isn't to make fun, but really just to illustrate, it's funny earlier too, because you kind of insinuated you're above the business card hustle, but here you are dressing up as a pickle, crashing conferences with a branded pickle cart, handing out pickles wrapped with your flyer for Design Pickle. So what inspired that? And more importantly, for the people who don't have that kind of sense of hustle, of do whatever it takes to get clients, how do they acquire that trait?
Well, again, back to unfair advantages. I spent 2 years in high school as a mascot for various companies. So I actually have professional training as a dressed up mascot. I worked for a pizza company in Tucson, Arizona called Magpies Pizza at the AAA games, baseball games, handing out coupons. And then I worked for another company at grocery store grand openings as an M&M and other various brands. But
to grow your business, you've done some very unusual things, like you've gone to conferences and you've dressed up as a pickle, in a pickle suit, and you gave out pickles wrapped in your business marketing materials. And so the question is kind of about your sense of hustle, and how did you acquire that, and how can people who are less hustle sort of pick that quality up, because it is important, especially in the beginning of a startup. You're doing a lot of shit that doesn't scale at all.
Yeah. Well, I think the foundational part of hustle is you really, really, well, there's one of two outcomes, is that you're a very good liar, which, there's a lot of people out there that are that, and they can hustle people in a negative way. But I think, and by the way, I don't recommend that being your strategy. But the other piece of it is if you absolutely just believe in what you're doing or selling or your service or your product. And for everyone who kind of feels like nervous about getting out there, being silly, doing whatever it takes, that kind of thing, I find that if you know what you're doing is truly great and awesome, then it's pretty easy to go out there and talk to people about it. Now, what I see, the pitfall of most startup entrepreneurs, is they don't have that confidence. They've just put up a website and a couple ideas, but they haven't gotten that validation around what their product is, whether or not people like it or enjoy it. So to go out and hustle does feel super uncomfortable, because in the back of their minds, they're actually like, man, I don't know if this works. This is still an experiment. The event you're referencing was the Infusionsoft conference, and that was in March. So we had about 5 weeks after launch, if you will, that we under our belt to know that, look, by the time we got to this thing, like what we were doing was working. It was really helping people. And just to go and do a stunt like that, the end goal was just like, look, here it is. Here's what we're doing. Check us out. And in my mind, no matter how silly or crazy I looked or what we were doing, it was one of those things where I was super excited for people to try us out and check us out, because I knew that we had a good solution on our hands.
That's interesting. And I just want to say, too, that I don't think it's beneath dignity to do wacky things to get business. I mean, you're being like funny and unique, excuse me, and that really resonates with people, especially you go to a conference, everyone's kind of stiff and nervous, oh, who's the big wig in here? And that levity can really play to your strength.
And the term that I like that I've been started using is like to find your pickle. What is that thing inside you, or that goofy angle that you can play? Because you're exactly right. There's so many people are trying to be too serious about things, and at the end of the day, we're emotional consumers. We buy things emotionally, not rationally. Whether or not your tool is the only one in its market or it's one of 1,000, you're going to have to win people over. And I just find the easiest way to do that is to do it through creativity and to find a creative idea, a funny, unique, memorable thing. And trade shows actually are like primed for it, because if I was just walking down the street in a pickle suit, or I show up to a random networking event, it'll still kind of work. But like trade shows are this weird, or any trade event, doesn't have to be a trade show. Like it could be like a conference, it could be a get together, whatever. But like they're just these weird manufactured environments that everyone kind of, it's like not normal life. You don't just normally go in and hand out business cards all day and listen to all these speakers.
No, it's contrived.
With that said, yeah. So like just to throw in a curveball of like, whoa, didn't expect that. I find it totally works better than just in everyday marketing. I'm not dressing up a pickle every day handing out pickles. That would be fun. That's kind of my backup plan if this Design Pickle didn't work, was to take my cart and like sell ice cream pops out of it. But thankfully I'm not going to have to do that.
Okay, that's interesting. You mentioned too that a lot of people go out there and they're not really confident in their idea, so that comes across. So my question is, how did you arrive at your sort of unwavering confidence in your business idea to where you could stand behind it, with authenticity, that people can feel like, oh yeah, this is good stuff?
Yeah, great question. So I had an unfair advantage, and that was I knew 100% I was solving a real problem that people had with Design Pickle. I wasn't trying to create a new thing and say, hey, here's this new thing or widget or service you don't know you need. Do you want to buy it? people have real problems with design. Like, I ran an agency for 10 years. I knew that this was a problem that people had. So that was step one. And I think that goes back to probably a lot of the same thought leadership you and I have both read, is solve a real problem. Don't try to sell someone on something that's completely new or novel, because you're going to have a really uphill battle. You have to create the market in that case, and nobody has that with their or finances to do that. Now, once we knew we were solving a real problem, it was simply solving it well enough where people, liked it, and that you get that customer feedback. And the best customer feedback is money. So were people giving us money for it and continuing to give us money? The second best customer feedback is actual feedback, like, hey, this is awesome. And I actually shed a tear the very first time that happened, because in 10 years of running an agency, I got a lot of opposite of positive feedback. Let's just put it that way. So, people are paying us, people are saying we like it, more people are signing up. Well, what more did I need to know that we were onto something? And then, now the name of the game is just finding more of those people.
So part of your advantage too is your business model fundamentally is kind of set up for success, because the recurring relationship, and this is kind of the direction I want to move into now, it's something that kind of grows. Whereas if you're, billing your clients, they'll feel like they're being nickel and dimed sometimes. And this is something that I read about in the Automatic Customer, and something that I've experienced too as a freelancer. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this show is about membership sites, about recurring revenue. So my question for you is, how did you sort of arrive at your business model? Because it wasn't what you were doing before. And how do you think it served you in terms of not just the fact that you're earning recurring revenue, but just kind of like, how does that model serve your business holistically?
Yeah, well, the reason I went the way I went was because there was no one else doing it this way. And that to me was going to be an opportunity. Trying to figure out recurring revenue is, everyone thinks of how great it is for the business owner. Oh man, I want a recurring revenue stream. But actually for the buyer, it's pretty sweet too. So if you have a fixed fee for something with enough bandwidth, like you're getting enough out of that, whatever that fixed fee is, you always feel like you're getting a good deal. No one who signed up for Netflix or Hulu thinks like, man, I'm sure not getting a good deal. Like, otherwise you wouldn't subscribe to it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to see where that point was in the pricing model that I could try to test a recurring revenue design service. Mm-hmm. Now, that's super risky when you think about the whole world of design. And this comes back to the problem part. I share that when we were at my peak at the agency, we were doing like $250,000 engagements, and nowhere in that whole project, which included a zillion things, were we seeing much gratitude. However, when I rewound back and thought to myself, when did we actually deliver like really crazy value to our clients during those engagements? It wasn't with a huge fancy app or design platform or brand. It was like the CEO forgot about a meeting and needed some PowerPoint images the next business day. And like when we did that, it kind of rose to the occasion and worked hard, even though it was a super simple thing. The clients loved us. And so I thought, well, damn, there's the opportunity right there. Is like, let's not try to do all of creativity in this model. Let's just focus on where I know that value point is. And then like, I want to say I did some crazy pricing research or whatever. I just put myself in the mindset of the buyer. I just said, look, I know people are paying $50, $75, $150 an hour for this kind of stuff. What could I be that's like a totally disruptive price point? That's where I came into that $200, $195 range. Now that price point, I reversed out like with a financial model to say, okay, based off of an average of this many requests per person, per client, and a designer taking this much time, what's the supply that we would need for how many designers, what does the designer cost, et cetera, et cetera. So I just didn't pick a price point and went with it. I actually created a financial model around that with the assumptions. And surprisingly, the assumptions have held pretty true even as we scaled. Like, we've gotten less efficient because we've had to add in more layers of management, but it's worked pretty well. And in fact, we found that we were undervalued, and we raised our prices last month, and we've seen no decrease in sales because of that.
You could probably raise them again too.
Yeah, we probably will. There'll always be like the 195 plan. That's part of our brand now, I think. And I also think about what the buyer can buy. And most of these folks that we're now going after have authorization to hire an agency or hire a freelancer or hire a full-time designer. So asking them to spend a couple $100 or less than $1,000 a month with us is an easy thing. They can put that on a credit card, no problem. And that is also, we've shifted our target audience to focus on those types of folks. We still love we still love startups, solo entrepreneurs, and we'll always have a place for them within our service. But now we've aligned all of our marketing efforts and our sales efforts to find more that marketer, that in-house marketer. And that came because we saw those were the people that valued our service the most. It wasn't that we were doing anything differently for them versus the other people, but they were the ones who valued it the most.
Now, those kinds of people, they have the budgets, they have all that kind of thing, but their design demands are also quite substantial. And you offer unlimited revisions, do you not?
Yeah, unlimited anything. So we have a couple safety throttles to kind of not like break it.
Can you talk about your sort of business governors that keep you from being taken advantage of?
Correct. Yeah. So the first one is simply your time is our biggest governor. So our service is email driven, and it takes time to sit down and write an email and submit something. We find that most people don't just sit at their computer and request things all day long. They actually have to go to meetings and lunch, and they're doing a lot of other stuff. So that's one. The pace of delivery is one that we advertise for most plans next business day delivery, but we do clearly communicate that is a brand promise. It's not a guarantee. So after about, I'd say 2 or 3 requests a day, like if you're submitting 1 or 2 things a day, not a problem. If you get beyond that, you can continue to submit requests. We'll continue to process them, but you'll see a bit of a pacing kick in where 1 and 2 are delivered next business day, 2 and 3 maybe 2 days, and then it kind of goes on from there. And that we find is totally fine. No one ever has complained about that. Even 2 or 3 business day for these marketers who are used to things taking a week just to see 1 revision is awesome. But that's the other governor for it. And everyone sort of finds their natural equilibrium with our tool in the larger context of their design environment. Because we're not here to replace a designer one to one. We're just here to augment, to offset, to be. It's like you have Adobe Illustrator, InDesign, Design Pickle. It's one of the many tools you can use for getting some design done. But we're not going to be a full-time equivalent at $200 a month.
Right. That would defeat the purpose of why you started this thing, kind of.
Yeah, and again, it comes back down to the pain points that we're having. Most of our clients, most of our clients have a freelancer they love, an agency they've contracted with, or an in-house designer that's on staff. So when I do sales, actually, it's tough because they're like, they shut down. They're like, I already got somebody. And I was like, no, listen, we're not an or proposition, we're an and proposition. We want to be on your team. So when you have 10 ebook covers you need to do, or social media graphic a day, you send that to us and let your main guy focus on whatever your larger strategic stuff.
Yeah, you guys are kind of like a better Fiverr, but a 195er.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Well, 195er. And Fiverr, dude, do use it. And we're not going to beat Fiverr if you just need one thing done, because they're going to be cheaper. They're probably going to take the same amount of time, and and they actually can do more stuff. You know, you can get like jingles made, like whatever you want on Fiverr. But you could have people pretend to be your boyfriend or girlfriend on Fiverr. It's like the craziest thing ever.
Have you ever done it?
But if you have, yeah, like you could pay like, hey, for $30, I'll switch to be in a relationship with you on Facebook and like post things for you for a week. It's like so wild. But long story short, the Fivers keep us in business because at a certain point, again, you hit a natural friction point with Fiverr when you have 5 things, 10 things, 20 things, and then you say, okay, this doesn't work for me. I need a new tool, and that's where we want to be.
Okay, you know, one thing that you mentioned that was interesting is kind of, first of all, your turnaround time being 24 hours, which I know is possible primarily because you have a team in place, you have human resources and systems and processes in place, and the same thing with the letting the tasks build up. Because in my service, I don't have a team, I really don't have processes, it's just me. So I can't offer more than 1 task at a time, and I can't offer anything faster than 48 hours. So my question to you is, how did you develop your processes, and did you start from the very beginning to sort of make your service run efficiently, even if you're kind of on vacation or whatever it is?
Great, yeah. So my simple answer is, and I may have touched on this during our first segment, I can't remember, is I just was kind of lazy. Like I didn't, when I closed my business last year, I didn't want to have to manage people for this production graphic design, which I was doing for a lot of my consulting clients. So what I did is I created a system and process to delegate and outsource this that still required some of my intervention, but it was something where like literally every time I would have a job, I would document, hey, what's the best way to do this? Now the actual creativity part wasn't documented, that's up to the designer, but here's the request, here's how you create it, here's how you name the files, here's how you send it back to me to review. Then I review it and I traffic it to the client or not. So that was the bones of it. And again, my background and my experience running an agency, I had a team in Argentina that we had to work with remotely. So I knew really well how to manage the creative process digitally. And when I simplified that and focused on the graphic production design, that even became easier because now we're just doing like really one-to-one kind of things. I need this, here's my brand, give me this. I need this, here's my brand, give me this. The big breakthrough for me was finding the ticketing system process that allowed us to really just increase volume and streamline everything.
And you did that in-house?
Just reviewing.
You built that system in-house?
Oh, no. We use Freshdesk. It's an off-the-shelf. It's like the Indian competitor of Zendesk. But we're going to have to build our own probably within the next 12 months. I mean, we're starting to kind of stress that system with the volume that we're doing. But the main thing is that I like every time there was something I was doing repeatedly, I thought, how can I document this? How can I automate this? And then I just started plugging people in to take over these documented processes and systems that I had created when I was just doing things by myself. And I don't know, I don't want to oversimplify it, but that's just kind of how it is. And now every time, like the whole team, everybody knows, like if you do something or whatever, we have a public Evernote folder for our notebook for the whole team. You create a process, you do screenshots, and you may not be delegating that at this time. However, when it is time to grow and to scale and move this responsibility to this responsibility, that's ready to go, and we're not going to have to sit around and do that as the business is running and moving. Because frankly, people often don't delegate because in their mind it's more work to document and to process and to train a new person than it is just to do it themselves. So to do that before you need to do that actually like makes it super easy to delegate it when the time comes versus trying to do it like in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, I think that's just super solid advice. Like just think ahead and document it before you need it, and then you'll have it when you need it. And you also said you don't want to oversimplify it, but I guess it really is kind of that simple that you do something, you document it, and then you have it on file.
Yeah. Now, the best book I read on this is Checklist Manifesto.
Checklist
And
manifesto.
the guy who wrote this book was really curious about a couple of industries, specifically medicine and aviation, and found that most of the big safety and health advances in those two industries were because of simple checklists. They were just like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And if you look at the checklist for flying an airplane, it's actually fairly simple, like flying a 747 or something. There's like, I mean, there's a lot of technical knowledge that you wouldn't know what this word means or this thing is, but it's like 10 steps, 5 steps, 3 steps, 2 steps, like just to do that. And when I first started, I actually kind of had like checklists. When I read that book, I was super inspired. I'm like, I'm going to document everything. Like my whole life is to be automated. And then I got kind of paralysis because it was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? And so my advice, if you start this process, is like just brain dump. Don't worry about it being perfect. And what happens is when you finally end up delegating it to somebody, you'll see how good it was by how good they follow your directions. And then if they don't do it correctly, you modify. And often I have this with my team. We'll all create a process and I'll send it to them, and they'll come back and like, I totally messed up. I'll even like have put in the wrong link to the wrong document or whatever in my checklist. It's like, oh yeah, that was confusing. Sorry. And you just edit, iterate.
Probably not a bad idea too, as an entrepreneur, to sort of make a habit out of externalizing your actions and the process that you go through to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, because how can you improve your business if you don't know the process points and where things might not be working or breaking down? And at my agency, this was a huge issue because when I had a problem at the very end of a 3-month project, there was no line I could trace back to say, this is where the breakdown was, or this is where we could improve, or this worked really well.
Yep.
It was like a black box. Like we got a contract and then we blacked out and all of a sudden we had a product later. So what I found is even if you just at a light level document what that is and try to create systems or step-by-step pieces, then when something doesn't happen on time or someone falls off the radar or there's a miscommunication, you can actually go back and see and identify why that happened. And, oh, this was said this way, or this wasn't documented and you kind of guessed and you guessed wrong. Let's elaborate on this part, and that to me has been game changer too, is now I have a feedback loop that we can measure and follow so that when things break down, which they always will, where was the breakdown? Or when things go well, why is it going well and how can we learn from that?
That's very interesting. Now, on top of being an entrepreneur, you're also a father and a husband. And we've talked a little bit about this before, right, you and I, but I thought it might be interesting for readers because you have 3 children, or you're having a third on the way, right?
Correct.
And that's a full-time job too, in and of itself. So how do you manage? How do you keep balance in your life, like not just on the business side, but just in life?
Well, I sucked at it for a really long time, and let's just say my wife was not very happy for many years to be married to an entrepreneur. Well, and in all seriousness though, like it's not easy, and it's been a huge learning process for me. Probably some of the biggest breakthroughs was my opportunity to build a business completely around those things. So with my daughters, I have 2 daughters, and like you mentioned, one on the way, I wanted to have an environment and a business where I knew that I could engage in their lives, be available, have a flexible schedule. I mean, that's the reason I became an entrepreneur. My oldest daughter's 10, and I started my first business when she was born because I was like, this sucks. I don't want to take time off to see my daughter and to go, hang out with her. So it's like, I'm going to quit my great job at Apple and start a business, which is always an interesting decision to reflect upon. Like that was back when like the stock was like $10. and I did have stock options back then.
Wow.
So, but the point is, sorry, tangent. But so like feeling confident enough that whatever there is a business or an entrepreneur experience out there that's perfect for your family and your life. I don't believe in this notion that you have to have these extreme sacrifices up front to have this super great benefit down the road. And so I used to believe that. I mean, when I was at my agency, man, I was like, I gotta put in all this time, no work nonstop, client calls at night, traveling to visit everybody, because this is my future for my family.
Yep.
And if I don't focus on this, then what, you know, like I'm an entrepreneur. My 401k is my business.
Yep.
So when I realized that I was just sort of like tearing myself apart, tearing my family apart, because of the stress and the hectic nature, I said, you know, and that was one of the main reasons for closing the agency last year. I was like, this is not for me. It was just like, look, what is the greatest kind of business that I can have? And back to what we were talking about earlier with the systems and processes, how can I create a system and a business that supports that and it doesn't conflict it, and doesn't now, not does it when I have 10 employees or 5 employees or even one other employee, like does it now. And that was the genesis of all the DNA of Design Pickle was literally doing it. So like, look, when I go home, I know things are getting done and I don't have to check my email. And like, even now with communication, the only thing that I have that will push a notification to me is a text message or a private Slack message.
Mm-hmm.
So all the other emails, all the other stuff that comes in from about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I won't see it until the next morning. And nothing in my world is even urgent enough to warrant a text or a Slack message, because we've created enough structure so that there's people handling stuff until then. And then if something does come up and it persists, then I'll see it in the morning and handle it right away.
That's beautiful, you know. And also, I want to add to that, kind of echo your sentiment, is you were in a tough spot, essentially, because, well, not tough, but let's say that having a family puts a lot more pressure on you to deliver PDQ with money and lifestyle and all that kind of thing. And when I came to Thailand, I had my back up against the wall, and that's when I built my business and made things happen. And I fear that if I had stayed in the U.S. and I could sort of run to my dad and ask him for money and stuff like that, I never would have gotten myself out of that kind of crappy mentality. And you mentioned too, like the working and the saving up for some, you know, distant payday. There's a really good book that addresses that specific topic. It's called The Millionaire Fastlane by M.J. DeMarco. It's one of the best.
Oh yeah, he's actually lives in Phoenix.
Yeah, and he drives like Porsches and stuff, right?
I've never seen it, but yeah, I read that book. That was a great book. Yeah. Kind of like poorly written. Like you can tell he really wrote that book, like himself. Like there was no ghostwriter. The quality, like the actual like prose wasn't the best, but it was a fantastic like story and a good philosophy.
Yeah, for sure. So,
well, and to that point, you know, not to harp on the automation and the process, but I think when your back is against the wall, you have to outsmart yourself. You have to do things differently in a way where you have to be more than you, because you don't have unlimited amount of time in a day. So when you're in a place like whether it's like a legitimate emergency
mm-hmm.
or artificial scarcity, which I tend to create for myself, then you become extremely resourceful and creative with your problem solving to sort of come out of that. And I'll push myself. I mean, like I'll max out my calendar, max out my resources, max out everything, because for me, that's like tearing a muscle when you're lifting weights. Like you can't grow that muscle until you stress it and tear it. And I feel that's the same way with our systems and processes in life and business, is like we have to continue to stress and grow and stress and grow.
Since you brought it up, does fitness play any kind of role in your life and in your business?
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely fundamental. And sadly, actually, as we're recording this, I've taken a week away from it because of a slight injury I have on my wrist, and that's persisting. And I feel like crap this week. You know, my
Yeah.
energy is down. I'm eating terribly. Like I'm tired, and I'm not getting any less sleep or doing anything differently other than not factoring that in. So it's 100%. And diet too. Like I'm a pretty clean eater, but um, you know, with kids, we have like I'll have a Saturday bender, actually like a Friday night to Saturday
Cheat
bender,
day. It's a cheat
whatever.
day.
Cheat day. Yeah, exactly. But even still, like if I don't keep to kind of a healthier diet, same deal. So I mean, that's like any father or any dad or any married guy out there who's looking for more, or anybody out there. I mean, that's I wouldn't be able to get up at 4:30, go to bed at 10:30, work all day if that wasn't a part of my routine. And I do it middle of the day usually, which is a big change from what a lot of people say with working out in the morning. I find that my morning's dedicated to study and meditation and prayer and all of that, and my afternoon lunch hour is the fitness focus, and that gives me a huge boost later in the day.
That's actually in line with current research that says that your testosterone to cortisol ratio is optimal in the late afternoon, about 4 or 5 o'clock. That's really the best time to go work out, not in the morning
Yeah,
where you're.
bo- bodybuilders know this. I mean, all the bodybuilder research. It's like if you want the maximum performance gains, you work out in the afternoon.
Yep. And yeah, and I just want to reiterate what you said. Like, if there's one non-business thing that you can do to improve your business, I would say lift weights. Like, lift heavy ass weights.
Yeah.
Like, straight up.
Yeah. Oh, and the communities that exist in those environments. I mean, and I'd say do it with a group or community because I've now created a whole other support structure with a bunch of dads like me. Because guess what? Dads that can work out at 2 in the afternoon are typically entrepreneurial folks. They're not working the 9 to 5, and it's a great way to just develop like another great community aside from your typical friend or business group.
I love how you sort of weave in your, most people compartmentalize, and I suppose you do a fair bit of that. You work for a few hours, you go to the gym for a few hours, but I just love this idea that you're weaving your business into your personal life, and you have the support structure of other entrepreneurs as you're working out, which in turn is a positive feedback loop onto your business and onto your energy and your family life. And man, I think that's absolutely beautiful, and I'm glad to hear people talk about it.
Well, and look, it's not like it took a lot of work to get here. I mean, I think the realization that I had was that to do all of that was simply me realizing that I could just do it. I didn't have to make all these sacrifices, like where I live, where my office is. All of that is a choice, and it sounds really basic, but it really is. And I look back at the last 10 years realizing that my decisions were being driven by external factors a lot of the time. And it's still a challenge. I still feel like I'm, looking at long and short and midterm decisions all the time. And sometimes I'm great about, being true to myself with the outcome. But having other bad experiences, I guess, helps me realize that it's just as easy to make a choice that aligns my life, like you mentioned, as it is to fragment it. But you have to be present and aware of that at all times.
Yeah, that's not easy.
No, it's not.
Okay, so I think we've pretty much breezed through all of the questions that I had. So, and we've touched on some really interesting, deeper topics too, which I like to talk about that stuff on the podcast. I don't like this machine gun ABC formulaic because you know what, man, we're business people, but we're human beings, and it's easy to kind of gloss over non-business aspects that contribute to your business, like fitness, like diet, like religion or meditation, or these other habits that support your business, and your business in turn supports them. So the final thing I want to ask you, I feel like I sound like Christopher Walken today. The final thing I want to ask you is what is the number one piece of advice that you would give to people who haven't quite, quote unquote, made it yet, or maybe who are in a similar position to where you were at with your agency, to sort of take it to the next level?
Well, that's a great question. I would say don't live a life upstream, and especially with your business, don't be trying to fight upstream with your business. I try to swim upstream for 10 years with the agency, focusing on an outdated business model, trying to convince clients they needed something they didn't really need, that really wasn't providing a lot of value. And I was moderately successful because I was a great salesperson. So you could say I was a hustler in the negative sense. Now, like, focus on creating real value, and focus on doing it in a way that doesn't require you to just totally change who you are. One of my decision-making filters was like, I don't want to learn anything new. I don't want to start something completely new and have to figure it out. I'm just going to go with something that I'm good at and create something around that. That's not super succinct, but creating authentic value in a way that is going to be pretty natural is gonna just allow you to leverage that to a whole new level. And people are going to see that, you're going to feel more confident, and it's going to create that snowball effect that every entrepreneur is hunting for when they're trying to start a business. So hopefully that's a okay little piece there.
By the way, would it be cool to provide your filter, your checklist for when you create a Design Pickle, the personal and the business one, to my audience? Can we give that away?
Yeah. You have the copy I sent you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, share that. I mean, that's maybe like part 2 of the answer is getting clarity with what you want that's not part of your business.
Yes.
So knowing what your desired life is like, and creating enough space so that you can evaluate that and then make the decisions. And like you'll share with the decision-making filter, having a set of decisions that hey, if I want this in my life, these are the things that need to be true. And then just starting to focus on those truths as fast as you can, because then it's a cause and effect kind of relationship. And once you get those in place, for me, being able to spend a lot of time with my family was what I started with. And I went back and say, okay, to do that, I'm going to need a business that kind of runs itself. I didn't say, hey, I'm going to try to create a business that runs itself for fun. There was a deeper reason there.
That is such a good point. Your reason why, the more that you can get into your reasons for why you're doing what you're doing, the more motivation you'll have because business is hard work. You still have to put your nose to the grindstone and do a lot of things that you'd rather not be doing. You'd rather be, out taking a walk in the park or whatever. But you're inside staring at your computer screen. But your reason why is really important, especially if it revolves around your passions, your family, your purpose in life. It's very important to take time away, meditate on those things. I think I won't get into mine. But
I just discovered Diablo 3, which is like the worst thing I've ever found at my age with my business. Like, I'd rather be playing that right now. Like, it's such an addictive game. I know it's super old and probably everyone's played it by now, but like I've never gotten into it. So that's been like that's like my current personal struggle in life right now, is work on the business or stay up till 2 a.m. playing Diablo 3.
All right. If
I know it's a terribly not profound way to end your video podcast, but you said walk in the park, and that's like what I thought of immediately.
Well, if there's a man without vices, I don't want to meet him.
Wasn't that scrumptious? Thanks for listening to the Membership Site Success Podcast with membership site expert Vic Dorfman. For oodles of free tips, tricks, and tutorials on crushing it with recurring revenue, go to www.vicdorfman.com. It's what all the cool kids do, and you do want to be cool, don't you? See you next time.